The Pixel 3a already had a formula that I was quite a big fan of, an amazing camera and a budget phone. Can the Pixel 4a continue that legacy? Hey, I'm Brian and this is my review. In terms of design, the story with the Pixel 4a is very similar to the 3a, though in some ways it got even more rudimentary. That also goes for the packaging, by the way, which has even been stripped of the stickers. The two-tone design is gone in favor of a soft-touch plastic unibody that I have to say actually looks quite boring. A slab of grey plastic, but at least it feels nice in the hand and I do like the colored power button. What I do like as well is that the phone is rather small. That's refreshing in a world where phones get bigger and bigger. This together with the plastic construction also make it very light, despite that it is built well though with no creaking and nice clicky buttons. The vibration motor is also high quality but not as good as on more expensive phones. And the phone is of course not IP rated, but it does have rubber seals on the SIM tray and such to make it hopefully at least survive if you get caught in the pouring rain. Audio is a real strong point of this phone though, with both a headphone jack and stereo speakers. And those speakers really are amazing, with good clarity even at high volumes, not just for the price but in general. The display is probably the biggest upgrade to the 3a, not so much in terms of the actual panel but more so in looks. What it doesn't have on the back it makes up for on the front, with small bezels all around and a punch-hole camera on the top left. The panel itself is good but not groundbreaking. It's 1080p at 5.8 inches, so definitely sharp enough, but colors don't pop as much, which you may or may not prefer, and the maximum brightness also isn't that high. This also makes the fact that it does support HDR not that relevant. It is an OLED though, so blacks are nice and deep. What it doesn't have is a high refresh rate, but at this price that's not as big of a deal, even if it would have been nice. The small size is I think something a lot of people might appreciate. It's not quite small enough to comfortably use with one hand, but it's better than the 6.5 inch phones we're used to now. For consuming media like video, it's a bit on the small side in my eyes though. If you want to know, by the way, if you should rather pick up a Pixel 4a or the OnePlus Nord, you should also check out my comparison of the two once that's out. With the Snapdragon 730 and 6GB of RAM, the 4a won't win any spec awards, but at least it has 128GB of storage standard. And I am happy to report that also thanks to Google's software expertise, this hardware doesn't slow the 4a down. There are no stutters in the UI, no lockups of apps as was still the case on the 3a, and load times are quick for the most part. No 90Hz still hurts the fluidity a bit, and the 4a still does have the same processing power issue as the 3a in the camera department. The chip just isn't fast enough to show you what the picture is going to look like in the viewfinder, especially at night, and image processing also takes a few seconds. This really isn't that big of a deal though. What might or might not be a big deal to you is that the 4a is coming in without support for 5G. If you live in an area or are on a carrier where 5G reception is few and far between, then you shouldn't be worried about this and just get a 5G phone on your next upgrade in a couple of years. But if you do have access to plenty of 5G towers around you, this is something to think about. The 5G build-out here, for example, is now at the point where it actually makes a big enough difference that I'd consider it. It's over 10 times the speed in some places. The fingerprint sensor on the back is very fast, by the way, and also more reliable than ones on the front. But it did take some getting used to for me now that it's more of a rarity, and it's also a bit inconvenient when the phone is lying on a table. The software is one of the primary reasons to get a Pixel, and that's the story here too. This is one of the first phones to now already have Android 11. Everything is well optimized and all of the animations look really beautiful. There aren't many options for customization or things like that, but you do get Google's smart always-on song recognition and of course the always-on display that's really nice. Let's finally get to talking about the camera, because that's the other reason to buy a Pixel phone. In typical Google fashion, the single 12-megapixel sensor is very unassuming but packs some stunning capabilities under the hood. And the pictures also are typical for a Google phone. Very high sharpness and contrast across the board paired with natural colors and great dynamic range. No overexposing or misses in white balance, it's just a pleasure to shoot with. You do have that issue that I mentioned before of not really knowing what the photo is going to look like before taking the shot, but you also don't really need that either because the phone will always give you a breathtaking result no matter the conditions. It really does surprise you with its picture quality more often than not. You do have to like the very processed look though. Night sight is still awesome as well, with unbelievable amounts of detail even in very dark scenes. What I noticed though is that the pictures sometimes turn out a bit too dark for my liking. Google might have turned some dials here because I don't remember this being the case. And that also somewhat goes for selfies, even if they still look really good with great sharpness and blurring of the background. Video recording has never been a strong point for the Pixel, and that's no different here. In terms of raw picture quality though, this is one of the best phones out there, not just for the price but in general. And for that I can also forgive the lack of an ultra-wide or zoom camera. I'd take one great sensor over 4 bad ones any day. Battery life on the 4a is good, even if it's nothing special. I get about 5 hours of screen on time with messaging, browsing and some video watching, but no gaming. In other terms, that's a solid day of use with some juice left in the morning every other day. That's still way more than I can say about the Pixel 4 though. The phone only charges at 18 watts, but because the battery isn't that large, you still get about 50 to 60% back in half an hour. You don't get the extra of wireless charging, of course. Not a whole lot really changed from the 3a to the 4a. You just get a bit more modern front design with slightly better performance at a lower launch price. The lack of 5G really is a bit of a bummer to me. This also means that if you have even less money to spend, getting a used or refurbished 3A for cheap is still a great option. Apart from that, the story with the 4A is basically the same as before, which is also why I can basically say the same things as in my 3A review. I think the idea of pairing a budget phone with an amazing camera really makes a lot of sense, because that's all a lot of people are looking for in a phone. This isn't the right choice for the spec heads and enthusiasts, but rather for the moms and dads out there that just need a phone to take calls and send messages, but also want a camera they can trust on their next family vacation. Normally that last thing necessitates a high-end phone, even if you don't need any of the other features except for the great camera. But thanks to this, you can spend less. So next time a family member asks you for a phone recommendation, Pixel 4a is still a solid answer. And of course, for everyone who wants a smaller phone, this is one of the only good options left as well. If you enjoyed this video, you know which buttons to press. Don't forget to press that follow button on Twitter, and don't forget your mask when you leave the house. I'm Brian, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.